годиннику. Дякую, шановні організатори, що включили запис. Ще раз повторюсь, 17:00 на годиннику, 26 серпня 2025 року. Щиро вас вітаю з початком нового навчального року. Ми надзвичайно раді, що, незважаючи на літній період, ви знайшли час і зацікавились спільним проєктом Центру українсько-європейського співробітництва, який я тут в особі директора представляю, Михайло Віхляєв, та нашим новим партнерам. Ми тільки з квітня 2025 року почали співпрацювати з Академією соціальних наук міста Лось, Республіка Польща. У нас сьогодні запланована лекція на тему «Культурна пам'ять та ідентичність у глобалізаційному світі». Спікер відома всій країні, дослідниця Джоанна Скиба. Вона досліджує освіту дорослих, дистанційну освіту, довгий час очолювала міжнародний відділ в Київському університеті, а зараз очолює той самий міжнародний відділ в Академії соціальних наук міста Лоць. Щиро раді бачити Джоанну на наших заходах. Дякуємо і неодноразово буду повторювати представникам Польщі за підтримку України, починаючи з перших днів війни. Завдяки вашій підтримці ми вижили, функціонуємо. І зараз маємо таку велику нагоду спілкуватись разом, ділитись досвідом на такі досить цікаві теми, пов'язані з культурною пам'яттю та ідентичністю. Я завершив своє вступне слово і з задоволенням надаю слово пані Джоанні. Джоанна, please speak.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to join today's lecture and our online meeting, and I'm happy to be part of our academic life and our academic community. As I was already introduced, I've been part of the Academia for many years. Right now, I am the coordinator of the international office at the Academy of Social Sciences in the city of Łódź, which is central Poland. And I am also part of the international office, where I am the head of international office in the city of Włocławek. So I work with the city mayor and also the councillors, which is important because it brings all of my experiences together. So joining international relations, cooperation with many institutions, and also academic world. I would like to concentrate on cultural memory and also a very close notion, namely cultural identity, which are somehow interchangeable, as we know, and how they are identified in our globalized world. I think we have a lot of experiences in those areas, as this is our heritage. I think at the end of the meeting, of the session, if I ask you some questions, please answer to me on the chat. They will be very simple yes/no questions, so that we will be able to refer back to our own convictions or experiences, sometimes easy, sometimes difficult, because cultural memory and cultural identity, or collective memory, as we sometimes say, are very fragile. They are seen everywhere, especially now and during the uneasy times. And I think we all related to the world of academia. We may share not only theory, but also quite a lot of practical views and also points. So collective memory, or sometimes, as I said, called cultural identity, is preserved and transformed across generations, from one generation to another. And it is seen in art, in literature, in many oral histories, and they all become tools. They help people to remember, sometimes to resist, sometimes to redefine, and sometimes, which is also important to stress, to forget. So we will define this cultural memory, and we will explore this memory and how it functions in many contexts, and also analyze how literature traditions may be shaped. And we will also reflect on this memory's role in inclusion, exclusion, or identification. So, starting with definitions, because we are starting from the very bottom. Cultural memory is the form of memory which is shared by a group, that is transmitted across generations, and it is transmitted through symbols, narratives, stories, practices, or rituals. And collective identity, which sometimes some scholars say it's some different notion, but I guess it's quite close to cultural memory, so I will interchangeably use those two. The collective identity is the shared sense of belonging to a group, which is based on common experiences, history, values, and symbols. So as we see, they are both quite similar. And of course, there may be an argument which one is closer to us, but I guess these are interchangeable. Starting with the basics, we need to define the main theorist. The main theorist is Maurice Albax. I will write the name on the chat because it's pretty important. Just a second. Maurice Albax, that's a French theorist, who introduced the idea of collective memory, and he emphasized the social framework through which this memory is constructed. And it is also his task in the theory of sociology to distinguish this communicative memory, which he called it's a short-term memory, and it's more personal, and also cultural memory, which is long-term memory. So we know and we see this, all of these notions may be subjective, they may be emotional and symbolic. Very often they are analytical and they are related to specific situations. We need to focus on the situations when memory functions in the global and local contexts and how different they are. So in more global context, we have the memory of the Holocaust, for example, where we have the global framework of remembrance, where we see and have museums, education, and memorials in many towns, places, in many countries. So this is more of a universal memory. We can also refer back to American history, so slavery, colonialism, and different countries which have this heritage of slavery memorize those histories differently. So American heritage is different than if you think of colonialism in the United Kingdom or some African countries. So or let's say colonialism related to Portugal, for example, which is also has been part of history. But all of these countries memorize those contexts of history. The thinking about the global contexts of collective memory and cultural memory, we need to focus also on the digital memory. So how internet and social media create new archives of cultural memory, which are accessible freely for all of us. Really, I mean those which have free access, of course, because there are some resources which where you need to pay some fees, but the global archives of the internet are accessible. So going into the second part of the local context, we may focus on the oral traditions, on rituals which preserve in local histories, and they resist the dominant national narratives. There are also local monuments and local memorials. And this shows how communities remember events like war, disasters, and political struggles. From my own experience, even in the city where I live in the city of Włocławek, which is central Poland. There has been many arguments over one big monument, which is in the very city center in the Liberty Square. As the name shows, the Liberty Square is a common name, and it's usually the main square in the city. And this monument underwent many transformations, names, or symbolic character. Many people say it should be abolished, it should be completely removed from the place where it is now. But there is a group of supporters and there is a group of opposition. So it's not easy to come to terms with the decision what to do with this monument in the city center. Usually the elder generation claim it should remain as it is because it's a symbol of history, and younger generation, those who are more representatives of digital memories, really, they claim it should be removed completely. I think you know about some places in some countries where monuments are, those removed, abolished monuments are collected and they are shown like on a special show or like in the playground, but they are removed from the city centers. This is a very fragile topic, so I will not go very deeply into removal of monuments, because every country has its history and it's difficult. But it is a hot example of how memories and cultural traditions work. There are also local contexts which are related to specific cities. For me, the specific city is Berlin, for example. The fall of the wall, which was very symbolic for Poland, for Europe. And this city is a symbol of cultural memory in itself. When you visit it, you just may get goosebumps because history is everywhere. And for us, for Polish people, it is also a symbol of changes, like the wind of change, the famous song. So the memory is embedded there in the physical structures, in the streets and in monuments. We may also focus on something more, it's something related to traditions, but also shaping memory and history. This thing is literature, how novels and poetry serve to support communities, how fiction can illuminate forgotten or suppressed histories and provoke emotional engagement. I think especially poetry can give us a lot of the emotional engagement. We also have, thinking about art, we have many examples in visual arts and monuments. In many cities there are many murals, so paintings on big walls which show and depict specific moments of history, moments of changes, and they comment the traumas, they comment victories or even failures. So they stress historical memories and historical culture. And there are many oral traditions, the traditions related to storytelling. And storytelling is not only a popular technique to use in lectures, but the storytelling is the act of remembering. Particularly, it is vital in societies which have lost written archives, or where written archives are not accessible, or sometimes even, let's say, I guess in some Amazon areas where the written language does not really exist. So storytelling is part of bringing history from generation to generation. And oral histories help fill the gap which is left by the official narratives. And they allow for multivocality, so bringing different voices heard in the remembrance of culture. National holidays and school curricula, public ceremonies create this feeling of identity and belonging. So they memorize our social inclusion, exclusion, and identity. I guess they mark the most important days and dates in our history, like Independence Day, which was, I think in Ukraine, was it 2 days ago? I guess so, yes, it was 2 days ago. So those holidays mark the important days and dates. We have efforts to be true. We want to foster reconciliation. So we have to try to bring on the true stories. We also should remember that it is easy to manipulate memory, just to justify power and to explain and bring on narratives from a different angle. But those competing memories may fuel the contemporary debates, but the most important for all is the visibility. The key characteristics of cultural memory, because I think it's also important to explain how they work. The key characteristics are the durability. So the sense of strength and power, which is preserved through the texts and rituals and monuments. Another characteristic feature is the normativity, which is shaped by the community's values, and also the selectivity, which involves remembering some things and forgetting others. So that's what I mentioned at the very beginning. So the theoretical foundations were laid, and the frameworks were laid by Maurice Albachs, and he argued that memory is really not socially framed. We remember not only in isolation, but we remember within the structures of social groups. Like those groups are family, they may be religious groups, there may be our class and our schoolmates and nations. And all these frameworks influence what really counts as important to us and relevant, and how this past is interpreted. There are many mechanisms which are used in cultural memories. And this cultural memory may be produced, it may be maintained and transformed. How and in what way? As we mentioned already, there we have rituals and ceremonies. So we have public commemorations, religious holidays, and civic events which reinforce the global or national interest in the sense of past. I know that for younger generation it may seem really unimportant, but for people, I think, starting at the age of 40 onwards, it is important to be bound to culture, to collective memory, and marking, celebrating those days and important dates is part of our life and cannot be excluded. Some other mechanisms involve the creation of stories and histories, and also the system of education. The system of education is seen as the school curricula which formalize certain historical narratives, but they also may omit others, which you may know from your history. And also in Poland, there were moments of history which were completely blacked out. And now we may feel ashamed of that, but well, as every country has those ups and downs, or the times of war, in Poland, the time of partition, the division of the country. And some of these stories were blacked out, they were simply removed. I remember in the 1980s, when I was a primary school pupil, there was official history and the forbidden history, and there were two clashing with each other. So when you had access to special radio transmissions, the so-called Free Europe, Radio Wolna Europa, for example, if you know if this name brings any connection, it was forbidden to listen to it because it was transmitted from London. The broadcast was in London. And it was totally forbidden in official, areas of education. But history, as I told you, in the 1980s, 1990s even, had two different narratives. One was the official way, and the other was the real way. We also have a lot of culture and cultural identity given in the media and our popular culture, in films, in television series, in online content, Netflix. We also have a lot of collective memory seen and observed in museums, which are still very popular to watch and to attend. These institutions curate material and traces of the past, and they try to show and exhibit the memories in a very attractive way, sometimes digitalized, and it's also part of our heritage. So cultural memory does much more than just preserving the past, as we all know and we are all aware of this. It shapes the groups of self-understanding and self-identification. It clearly defines the we. The memory helps define this group boundaries, and it tells stories of the origin and struggles and achievements. It is also legitimizing authority. So it states the political movements and it evokes selective memories to justify current policies. It may also foster solidarity, and it does, as the shared commemoration can produce emotional bonds among other members in our society. It is also important that we create the differentiating from the so-called others. So there is the we and there is the others. So this social identity emerges through contrast, remembering certain events which may be seen as part of our history or not part of history. And it's also important to say that cultural or collective memory is not static, as its content and meaning can be renegotiated. As the groups change, we encounter new challenges, and we also reinterpret the past. This concept of collective memory has been the subject of the numerous theoretical debates and also a number of empirical studies. So it has a lot of suggestive power. It is inspired in our memories in social sciences and also in the fields of psychology and even of the cognitive neuroscience. This social turn has led to the renewal of conceptual apparatus in the memory studies, and they create the fields which are very diverse in neuropsychology and psychopathology. So it also goes deeper into different areas in scientific disciplines. There is quite a lot to say on the conceptual overview, as I already mentioned, as we may have quite a lot of wide-angle literature, and we may search the narratives of the past from the historical perspectives. So the collective memory and social memory, they are the concepts for communicating our operations in the social system, the concept of collective memory for our system of consciousness. So collective memory is seen as the memory of individuals divided, but also seen together the memory of the collective group. There are two operational concepts. One is the essential contribution of psychology to go beyond the metaphorical character, and also the collaborative memory. So it may be, there are two concepts of the shared memory and collaborative memory. There are many theoretical foundations, as I said, the Maurice Albach's, and also there is Emilie Durkheim, and she laid the theoretical foundations for the study of memory in the human and social sciences. All of these researches started in the second half of the 18th century. and they were based on the research and the analogy and differences between society and personality. The concept of the collective memory was introduced in the 1920s and 1930s. So this Albax, the French psychologist, based his study on the memory of original institutions and their original sense of collective memory and frameworks were studied. His main thesis was that the social systems provide individuals with repertoires, so the base, which he called the schema, external to the individuals, that enable them to continuously attribute meaning to noise and to retain and organize the sound stimuli and transform them into personal musical memories. So he made a comparison to music and how we learn the so-called solfeggio, which is the broad musical term referring to musical knowledge. So the solfeggio is the institution which organizes musical meaning, and it synthesizes the meanings into music and music production. So using all of this terminology gives us the link between the history and our main concepts of collective memory we see now. After Albax, it was not really very precise because it was just the beginning. This lack of precision seemed to be the hallmark of research in all continuing social sciences. And so since 1980s, the term collective memory was used by social scientists to refer to the phenomena like memories, shared narratives, commemorations, collective representations. There have been many questions which appeared and were raised by in cognitive neuroscience, as this infatuation with Holbach's inspired others to search for the truth. So there was the question if memory lies in the heart of our collective memory, if collective memory can be called history. So the concept of collective memory was seen as the joint memory, understood as the memory of a social group to understand its past and its past transformation. I may propose that we do not abandon the concept, but we may clarify the concept of collective or social or cultural memory, because they are, as I said, they may be interchangeable. They may be used for communication operations. So they form the metaphor of collective memory. And the last 20 years, psychologists and cognitive scientists developed the body of work and research, which is devoted to the study of collective memory. Is it the same as the individual memory? And also putting this into some social frameworks of complementary and contemporary approaches. No doubt now the collective memory refers to cognitive operations, so it's specific to individual system of consciousness. The essential contribution of psychology is that it goes beyond the metaphorical character of collective memory and it substitutes the two concepts of shared memory and collaborative memory. So the notion of shared narrative is also used by many sociologists now. Many researchers studied many links between those notions, between collective memory or community identity. And there are many aspects of our everyday culture where we see they interchange or the memories intermingle. So when we adopt this bottom-up approach, starting in the early history of sociology, it shows that this communicative act of memories, of sharing memories, show that they expand to the levels of very complex social networks, the networks which form collective memory and cultural memory. So what is formed from these is called collaborative memory. So we land at this notion as the operational aspect, so collaborative memory. And the role of collaborative memory has been also explored by many researchers in many studies of culture, sociology, and also all the areas of psychological research. These studies highlight the essential characteristics of collective memory. So collective memory is imperfect. I would like to stress this again. Collective memory is imperfect, and it's sometimes very imprecise. This is the process of reconstruction. It is made by inaccuracies. And despite the drawbacks, it may be argued that the nature of memory allows for greater cognitive flexibility. So we all know that the deeper we go, the deeper we explore, the cognitive flexibility is may be supporting us and may help us understand the construction and maintenance of identities. Another benefit of the empirical research in social psychology is the collective selective forgetting or amnesia in selective forgetting. I guess sometimes it's the only way out. As I mentioned, the blackouts in Polish history, and you may also know what I mean and how I feel about this. That the collective selective forgetting may be the only way to move forward, to emphasize the importance of collective silence sometimes. It is the only way history may go on. That we need to over some of memory. So this social memory operates on many levels. As I said, forgetting is part of it, and also option is part of it, and sometimes it's but can you hear me? Everything's okay? Yeah, okay. Okay, so I just thought it stopped somewhere. Okay. So how does memory of society and social subsystem function? The social memory is not really purely collective memory. And the social memory is constituted by the traces left by communication in the individual system of consciousness. And there is this operational autonomy of social memory. So we all remember, going into some personal aspects, we remember our childhood moments, we remember conversations at home, we remember experiences. But memory is not only individual. Memory is part of the group work, and it's given and transferred in families, in communities, and entire nations, and also remembered, or as I said, sometimes forgotten. This is this shared remembrance, what scholars call the collective memory or cultural memory. So this is the just to give you one definition, because I guess some of you or many of you are waiting for the definition. The cultural memory is the way that groups remember their past in order to make sense of the present. And I guess it's also important to remember this notion and concept. So families may pass down stories from the grandparents or from migration journeys. The nations commemorate wars, commemorate revolutions or independence days. The social movements recall the moments of struggle when they were fighting for civil rights, when there were protests, victories. Those memories do not only live in our brains. They live in rituals, in monuments, holidays, textbooks, and they create this sense of we, a shared identity. How this collective memory works? It works when people tell and retell stories, and it shapes how the events are remembered. It works in symbols and spaces, like statues, like museums, memorials, or sometimes even the street names. If you think about September the 11th memorial in New York, it's not only for reflection, it's also keeping memory for future generations. We also work on collective memory by practices like anniversaries, a minute of silence before academic meetings, or singing national anthems before sports meetings. Also, the ritual of forgetting is the mechanism of how collective memory works. So memory may involve for the situation that the group chooses not to remember. Why does it really matter? It matters because the group needs this sense of belonging. The shared memory is the shared story. And without it, the communities may lose the sense of continuity. In times of conflict, the competing memories may fuel conflict, but acknowledging memories can also help healing. And for the future orientation, memory is not only about the past, it is about shaping the future. So this is the heartbeat of collective memory. Now I have some questions for you, which I will just read, and I would be happy if you could answer with yes or no on the chat. If you want to, of course, or you may just answer to yourself silently. Have you ever learned about your culture's past through histories or stories told by family members? Were there any stories told by your family members and you remember them? Yes or no? Do you believe that cultural memory is more powerful than written history? Or do you agree with this? Cultural memory is more powerful than written history. Answer yes. Would you say that monuments are essential for preserving collective memory? Do we really need monuments in our streets? Do you think cultural memory can be erased? I mean, can it be removed by government? Okay, the next one. Have you ever visited a museum that changed the way you understand your past? Have you ever visited a museum which influenced the way or changed the way you understand your past? And do you believe popular culture, like films, television, can play an important role in shaping our memory today?
Of course.
Yes. Do you think the younger generations are losing touch with cultural memory because of globalization and the internet, TikToks?
I think yes.
Have you? Yes.
Because it's life of young generation.
Yes. Yes, I think that's what I mentioned in my presentation. Yes, absolutely, I agree. And do you believe that digital technology, so social media, virtual reality, will become the main carrier of cultural memory for the future? So we will be only left with digital technology?
Yes, it's future culture.
Yes, so we may say it's the culture of the future, because we also have the artificial intelligence everywhere supporting us and counteracting with us, sometimes competing with us, but I think it's part of our reality. So the notions of cultural identity or memory or the global cultural memory, they are all, many of these are interchangeable. As we discussed, the identity is growing, but we are working and living in the globalized societies. And what we choose is that I think we should remember about our legitimacy, the heritage. It is also supported in many ways, like the UNESCO heritage, and we see in many places in the world, UNESCO supports cultural and historical heritage by giving this appreciation or recognition to many places, and we may therefore see the different aspects of history in many areas surrounding us. Usually this is culture, architecture, history. And sometimes, as I said many times, we wish to choose, commemorate, and sometimes we choose to forget. And I think it's also something which we should accept, and we should tolerate this. Okay, I think this is the basic concept of cultural memory and identity in globalized world. I would like to deeply thank you for today and being with me and attending the lecture on this Tuesday afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Зокрема, Джоанна, щиро дякуємо, шановні колеги, за те, що знайшли участь. Важкий період перед навчальним роком, прослухали лекцію. Хочемо запевнити, як організатори, що ви вчасно отримуєте матеріали, збірники тест-конференцій та сертифікати про підвищення кваліфікації. Бажаємо вам успіхів в отриманні вчених звань, доцента та професора. Усім щиро дякуємо і бажаємо гарного вечора. До побачення.
Дякуємо.
Побачення,
Bye
дякуємо.
bye. See you.
Дякую. Thank you.
Thank you.